BetUS, America's favorite sportsbook and casino. Live betting and racebook. We're celebrating 30 years with a historic offer. A 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits. Plus 10% gambler's insurance. Get started today. BetUS, where the game begins.
All right, we are back. It's been a while, a few weeks, no UFC fights. I've been just absolutely jonesing. Just waiting for some fights to be back. I mean, not the greatest card this weekend, but actually, there's some pretty good fights. Other than the main event, they could have juiced up the main event a little more to make the card look more attractive to the casual viewers, right? Because that's the first thing most people look at. Who's the main event, right? Not many people are like, oh, look at these prelim fights. Everyone's first thing they do is look at the main event, and then they judge the card based on who the main event is. But it is what it is. This is there's actually a lot of high-level fighters on this card. A few undefeated guys, newcomers. Do I believe Mackenzie Dern and Amanda Ribas should be in the main event? Probably not. Mackenzie Dern, right? Let's get into it. She's coming. I believe she's 2-2 in her last 4, and Amanda Ribas hasn't been looking the greatest either. But before we start, if you guys need a place to BetUS. Oh, shoot. What's going on here? BetUS promo code Iceman. And, new year. Let's try to keep that win streak going. I believe the last 2 cards, I think we just absolutely killed it. 100% on most of those picks. So, yeah, I think the last 2 cards, I think we got 100%. And then hopefully we keep that win streak going. It's tough, but we got to make those sophisticated sports picks here. So Mackenzie Dern, she's this absolute smoke show, and she's sort of in that, sort of that situation, like a Paige Van Zant, you know, like her skills are okay. Her jiu-jitsu is really good. Don't get me wrong. Her Brazilian jiu-jitsu is very good. Her striking and her MMA skills aren't the greatest. And Amanda Ribas is a black belt in jiu-jitsu as well, so she might be able to, it's the rematch, she might be able to do what she did the first fight and sort of just keep it standing, and I believe she is the better striker out of the 2. If Mackenzie Dern goes in there with the right game plan of, hey, I need to really take this fight to the ground and work. Like, if you're Mackenzie Dern, you got to do what Crone Gracie should be doing, right? Like, working on your wrestling, trying to get the fight into the position you want, using your jiu-jitsu, getting on top. And it's going to be tough, I think, with Amanda Ribas, because Amanda Ribas knows that. She's got pretty good takedown defense. And if it stays standing, she's probably the better striker out of the 2. So I'm going to lean with Amanda Ribas on this one. I have a feeling Amanda Ribas is going to just sprawl and brawl and probably edge out the decision. But if, Mackenzie Dern can get the fight to the ground, I know Amanda Ribas is a black belt, but there is levels to black belt. And Mackenzie Dern, I believe, is on a higher level, much higher level than Amanda Ribas. Up next, Santiago Ponzinibbio taking on Carlston Harris, man. Santiago Ponzinibbio now, 38 years old, has not been looking the same. There was a time when Santiago Ponzinibbio was one of the best guys in that welterweight division. He was on a huge win streak. I forgot what it was. It was something crazy. And he was knocking out everybody, even knocked out Gunnar Nelson. I know it was a little eye poke there, but, knocked out Neil Magny, and he had a nice little streak for a bit, even beat Sean Strickland. And then, it came back off a bad injury. He didn't fight in 3 years. So after the 2018 knockout win over Neil Magny, he was on this big win streak. Then he hasn't fought in 3 years, comes back, and now you're fighting an active Li Jingliang, and Leach crumpled him. And then, after that, he just wasn't the same, right? Lost to Jeff Neal, lost to Michelle Pereira, lost to Kevin Holland, lost to Muslim Salikov, so he has not been looking good. He's got a few wins, right, over Miguel Beza and Alex Morono. But I will give him this: the guys he is losing to are much higher level than a Carlston Harris. right? The Kevin Hollands, the Jeff Neals, the Muslim Salikovs, the Michelle Pereiras. These guys are all much higher level, I think, than a Carlston Harris. Carlston Harris is all right. He did lose to Chaos Williams his last fight, and it got destroyed by Shavkat. I'm gonna go with Santiago Ponzinibbio on this one. I think the right game plan. I think he can get it done. So I'm gonna take Ponzinibbio on that one. Next, we got Cesar Almeida taking on Abdul Razak Alhassan. So Cesar Almeida, if you guys don't know, he was the guy who sort of came up with our boy Boatan. They used to fight against each other in Glory Kickboxing, or maybe it was WGP or Super Combat. One of those professional kickboxing organizations where he's fought Poatan a few times. I think he beat Poatan, and Poatan also beat him. They've had a few decisions back and forth. And, super high-level kickboxer. He had that loss to Roman Kopilov. Split decision loss. Clearly, he needs to work on his ground game. And this one, Abdul Razak Alhassan, he's a big, strong guy, but he's not really known for being the highest-level grappler, which might play into Cesar Almeida's hands if he is unable to get Cesar Almeida down, and now you're forced to strike with Cesar Almeida. It's going to be a bad night. So styles make fights, and this might just be a really bad stylistic matchup for an Abdul Razak Alhassan. Unless, maybe this last year or whatever, he's really been working on his jiu-jitsu and his grappling. But you can only get so high when you start later in life, right? So, yeah, I'm going to go with Cesar Almeida on that one. It is at middleweight as well, and he's a big middleweight, so I'll go with Cesar Almeida. This one's interesting. Chris Curtis taking on Roman Kopilov. I believe this one should be a little higher up on the card. Chris, the action man, he really, really impressed me his last fight against Brendan Allen. He lost a split decision to Brendan Allen. Some people actually thought he may have won the fight. It was a very close fight. But the fact that it was so close was super impressive, right? Like, you can go in there, you don't even need to win the fight. But if you're fighting a high-level guy and you lose, but you have an exciting fight, I mean, it's almost a win. And that's what I feel sort of happened with Chris Curtis. Almost like Arman Sarukian, right? His first fight, he fights Islam Makhachev. Loses the fight, but actually gained more popularity and everything by losing, just because how good he looked in that loss. So Chris Curtis, I think he's a live dog here. Roman Kopilov's good, don't get me wrong. He beat Cesar Almeida in a decision, lost to Anthony Fluffy Hernandez, who's a monster. Haven't been too impressed with Roman Kopilov, I'm not going to lie. The fact that he's minus 270 is very strange. I don't know why Chris Curtis is such a big underdog. Maybe I got to look into it more. But I don't know why, to be honest. Chris Curtis is good, man. He's got a good camp there at Extreme Couture and Eric Nixick, right? Training with Sean Strickland and the boys. Always in good shape. Great takedown defense. Hard to get down, man. He's got great takedown defense, and he's a great striker as well. I would like to see him be a bit more active on the feet. But, Chris Curtis is the real deal. So I'm going to go with a big underdog, actually. Plus 220. That's a pretty significant underdog. Almost, Roman Kopilov's minus 270. Almost a 3-1 favorite there. So I'm going against the odds makers on that one. Christian Rodriguez taking on Austin Bashi. I believe this is Austin Bashi's first fight in the UFC. He had a lot of fights in his outside of the UFC, right? Smaller organizations. He had one fight on the Contender Series, which sort of got him the contract. And now you're seeing his first fight here in the UFC. I believe he's the number 1 pound-for-pound fighter in the Midwest. I believe he's ranked number 1 in Michigan. So take that for what it is, but I believe he's pretty high ranked in the state of Michigan and the Midwest itself. So top guy, but whole another ball game when you get to the UFC. But I think 23 years old, the UFC is smart, right? They're not going to rush him, nor should they. So I think if they really build this kid up, by the time he's 27, 28 years old, he's going to be just a murderer. I mean, he's already a murderer, but he's going to be even a different level, and he's going to even have just going to be more polished as a professional. That experience is key, man. Alhassan taking on Uroš Medic. I've been super impressed with the doctor, Uroš Medic, on this one. And he just destroyed Tim Means. I don't know if you guys seen his fight against Tim Means. Destroyed Tim Means his last fight. So that was really impressive. But, Tim Means, I know, hasn't been looking the greatest, but he's still the dirty bird. And if this fight stays on the feet, which it probably will, because Soriano likes to strike as well, so I'm going to lean with the doctor on that one, Uroš Medic, the Serbian. The next one I'll touch on, Marco Tulio taking Ihor Pretoria, huge favorite, minus 550. I mean, that's a gimme fight. The Brazilian should usually take that one. Thiago Moises versus Trey Ogden. This one's a good fight, man. Thiago Moises he's legit, man. He's got good ground game, good striking, well-rounded, but he's had some tough fights. That fight with Benoit Saint Denis, Ludovic Klein and Benoit Saint Denis are both monsters. He hasn't been able to crack that top 10, top 5, right? Like, he's had big wins. Like, he's beat Bobby Green, beat Michael Johnson, beat Kurt Holloway, but against the top guys, the Benil Dariush's, the Damir Ismagulovs, right? He's been in there with Islam Makhachev. He's been in there with Joel Alvarez. He's been in there with Benoit Saint Denis. Just hasn't been able to crack the top guys. Trey Ogden, I don't think, is one of those top guys. So I think Thiago Moises should easily win this fight. I just feel he's just better than Trey Ogden everywhere. Striking, jiu-jitsu. So I'll go with Thiago Moises on that one. Up next, we got Preston Parsons take on Jacoby Smith. This Jacoby Smith, I believe he was the guy on the Contender Series, and he looked pretty impressive on the Contender Series, not going to lie. 9-0. Looked really, really good on the Contender Series. And he has a lot of finishes. A lot of finishes in the first round, too, as well. So he's a guy that really likes to go out there and finish fights. And UFC loves that. So I think Jacoby Smith is going to finish Preston Parsons, in my opinion. I think he's going to finish him, and he's going to finish him early. First or second. Up next, you got Magomed Gajishev taking on Bruno Lopez. Magomed Gajishev, it says here he's fighting out of Bahrain, but I thought he's a Dagestani, considering his name. So he's born in Dagestan, but he fights out of Bahrain. That makes sense. A lot of Dagestanis, they've had to relocate to other countries in order to compete in, for example, the Olympics, because there's no more Russia. So if you guys watch freestyle wrestling, Paris 2024 Olympics, I think there's 5 or 6 weight classes for the men's freestyle wrestling, and like half of those were won by guys that were born in Dagestan, but just representing other countries because Russia is no longer in the Olympics, right? But this one, Magomed Gajishev, 9-0 undefeated. Haven't really seen too many fights of his. I seen his one fight in the UFC, he had the one fight in the UFC, and he had one on the Contender Series. It was okay. I wasn't too impressed. Won a majority decision. But this is going to be his hardest step up in competition. And Bruno Lopez is legit, but they have a common opponent in Brenson Ribeiro. And Brenson Ribeiro finished Bruno Lopez. And Magomed Gajishev beat Brenson Ribeiro his last fight in a decision. So I think they're just giving him a gimme fight here. So I think Magomed should easily get this one done. The last one I'm going to touch on is Nuro Aliyev taking on Joe Sali. He's another newcomer, undefeated. I love seeing these undefeated newcomers come to the UFC. 9-0. The guy's an absolute killer. Undefeated in amateur record. Undefeated in his professional, right? He was fighting under Khabib's organization for a bit, Eagle FC. Was killing it. But he's not known as a finisher. He's known as a guy who's he's got a few finishes, but he's known as a guy that wins a lot of decisions. And actually had a really good win over his last fight over Rafael Alves. If you guys don't know Rafael Alves, he's really entertaining. Had that great fight with Drew Dober, and then I believe the UFC may have cut him or something happened, and he's been absolutely killing it in karate combat. He's had some vicious, crazy kick knockouts, right? Knocked out James Vick, and he had another crazy kick knockout recently. So he's been killing it over in karate combat, but UFC is a whole nother ballgame than karate combat, obviously. And so this Aliyev is super legit, and unfortunately for Joe Sali, he's coming off 2 straight losses, and this is probably going to be 3 straight losses. Tough, yeah. So if 3 straight losses in the UFC, one more, you're probably done. So especially if you're not a big name, like if you've got a big name like a Conor McGregor, Tony Ferguson, you're pretty well known. Sure, they'll keep you around for a bit. Donald Cerrone, right? Big names. Joe Sali's not one of those guys, so unfortunately, he's probably going to lose this next one. And that might be the end of our boy Joe Sali, unfortunately for him. But it is what it is. Only the top go to the cream rises to the top, right? So, yeah, those are your picks. A nice little, I call this a little appetizer card for the big UFC 311. Let's pray nobody gets injured, like Merab blows out his knee or something like that. I feel like he doesn't even want to fight Umar. But yeah, we'll get into that in a week when that fight comes about. But yeah, let's make that money for the pay-per-view coming up out